Consider this script where you initialize the flight reservation application, enter the agent name, enter password, click the OK button, a very basic script which we have been developing over the series of tutorials. I'm sure this must have happened to you many times earlier. In case you have practiced the scripts demonstrated in the earlier tutorials, that you will run the script with the flight reservation screen already open. So let's run the script. Step number 1 executes fine, which is opening the flight reservation application. The script gets stuck at step number 2 because at this point in time, there are two flight reservation windows, each having two identical objects, and there is no way for QTP to determine which object to select. As expected, the script fails. This is a very ad hoc error situation which depends upon the end user executing the test. A good recovery operation in this case would be to close one of the flight reservation application. In case there is only one window, the test can follow the normal flow of execution. To close the flight reservation window, you can simply hit the escape button and the window closes. Such ad hoc errors can be easily handled using recovery scenarios provided by QTP. Using recovery scenarios, you can instruct QTP to recover from unexpected events and errors that occur in your testing environment during your run session. Recovery scenarios become crucial for large tests which run unattended and are paused until recovery operation is performed, thereby increasing the test execution time. Recovery scenarios activate specific recovery operations when trigger event occurs. There are 6 steps involved in creating recovery scenario. Let's look at them one by one. Step number 1 is to create a new scenario in the recovery scenario manager. In QTP, select resources, recovery scenario manager. The recovery scenario manager dialog box opens. It is the start point where you can create new scenarios or edit existing recovery scenarios. To create a new scenario, click the new scenario icon. A welcome screen is shown. Click the next button. Step number 2 is to select the trigger event. A trigger event is an event that interrupts your run session. In other words, it's an event on which occurrence you want trigger event to activate. Trigger event could be a pop-up window, and QTP can identify it by window title or the text it contains. Trigger event could also be an application crash, and QTP can identify it by the corresponding process. Trigger event could also be an object state, and QTP can compare the expected and actual values. And the last trigger event which is applicable to our scenario is test run error, which is used when a step fails in your test. You can specify the nature of error. Let's select any error option. Click next. The trigger event is now completely specified. Next step is to specify the recovery operation. Recovery operation is the corrective action you take when trigger happens. As a corrective action, you can restart Windows, make some function calls, close certain application processes, or do certain keyboard operations, which is the operation applicable to our scenario. Click the next button. We will select click cancel button or press the escape key, which will close one of the flight reservation window. Click the next button. Step number 4 is to specify the post-recovery operation. Post-recovery test run option specifies how to continue the run session after QTP has identified the event and performed all of the specified recovery operations. Various options are available, and in our case, we'll choose repeat current step and continue. Step number 5 is to name the recovery scenario. You may also give a description if required. On clicking the next button, a summary screen is shown highlighting the trigger event, recovery operation, and the post-recovery test run option selected for the scenario. Click the Finish button. Step number 6 is to associate the scenario with your test. Click File, Settings, Recovery. Add the scenario of your choice. Click OK. The scenario is now added to your test. Let's go ahead and test this scenario whether it works fine or not. I have one of the flight reservation window open. It's the same script. I'll run it again. Step number 1 will open one of the flight reservation window again. Step number 2 earlier was giving a problem. As you can see, the recovery scenario was triggered and the error was handled. If you check the test results, the recovery scenario details are shown. Before we close, a few pointers on recovery scenarios. Use recovery scenarios only for events that you can predict in advance but are ad hoc in nature. Predictable events which are more frequent should be handled programmatically using if and else loop or other conditional statements. You can also use statements on error resume next or on error go to 0 for error handling.